Hello, Just2 Film here. It's Oscar season, and this year's Oscar nominations are actually not that bad. 2024 has been a great year for movies overall. Look, you probably won't agree with my opinions, so fair warning. Also fair warning, I suck at pronouncing names. But today, I'll be ranking the 2025 Best Picture nominations from worst to best. Don't kill me, Wicked diehards. Wicked Part 1 is unfortunately my least favorite of the Best Picture nominations. I wasn't engaged for a majority of this film. I haven't seen the original musical despite listening and enjoying a lot of the soundtrack when I was young, so I'm not sure if it shares the same problems here, but my gosh, the film is incredibly drawn out at 2 hours and 40 minutes. And this is just a part one, it doesn't feel like it has a complete story. I also didn't connect with the musical numbers, though some stood out like Popular, the one with Jonathan Bailey in the library, both of which sounded great and had excellent choreography and a great energy to them. Defying Gravity is a song I loved when I was younger, but I found it to be kind of butchered, not by Cynthia Erivo's voice, but since the film kept interrupting it to try to deliver on some tension which failed. There's also some awful CGI in that musical sequence. I'm kind of shocked this is nominated for Best Visual Effects. While I appreciate the practical sets for this film, I found the film's use of CGI distractingly bad. This film has some terrible looking CGI animals. I also noticed weakly CG'd backgrounds, and I really didn't like the flat lighting and color palette of this film, which took away from my enjoyment of the vibrant sets. I will say I like the score and instrumentals of the music quite a bit. The performances were a mixed bag though. I thought Cynthia Erivo and Jonathan Bailey were pretty great, though I thought Ariana Grande was trying way too hard to be funny and her acting came off very transparent. Not in a way that was reflective of the fakeness of her character. So I understand Erivo's Best Actress nom more than Grande's Best Supporting Actress nom. I also thought Michelle Yeoh and Jeff Goldblum were kind of awful in this movie, and it seems like they popped in just to collect a paycheck. I get that this film is a Wizard of Oz prequel, but it went into the territory of shit like Solo, a Star Wars story, where the film insists on explaining a bunch of aspects from the original book and films. Like, oh, that's how they became the Cowardly Lion. Oh, that's how the monkeys became flying monkeys. It was really annoying. There are also many serious moments which I found unintentionally hilarious and cliche, like when a bunch of students who look way more goofy than Erivo's character make fun of Erivo for her hat, and I guess, subconsciously her green skin, or Erivo's magical mishap at the Shiz University when she first arrived. Shiz is a funny name in general. I guess the sound nom is because it's a musical, but the sound design was nothing exceptional. But I do think the Best Production Design nomination is earned. The costume design and hair and makeup is fine too. I understand where they're coming from there. A Complete Unknown was the most boring experience out of these Best Picture nominations. This is a very generic Oscar bait biopic, this time covering the musical career of Bob Dylan up until the Electric scandal, which only briefly touches on the backlash of. The film is co-written and directed by James Mangold, a filmmaker who I rarely connected with. Like, okay, I really liked the Logan movie when I was super into Marvel movies, and that love and affection for Marvel movies really ended with Endgame for the most part. My taste has drastically changed since 2019 with the thousands of films I've watched since. James Mangold's movies lack a distinct visual style, so I'm not engaged with what I'm seeing here. I think a lot of us agree that Indy 5 was pretty awful, and I only remember the train scene and that one girl from the Wolverine. Ford v Ferrari I saw really high when I wasn't sober, which I am sober now, and I was still bored to tears. And oh wow, this film's directing is competent but has zero personality. I wouldn't have expected that from James Mangold. I didn't connect with any of the characters, most of which felt like impressions done by famous actors. The film's bland, predictive nature is kind of antithetical to the time in Dylan's career it explores. This film focuses way too much on Dylan's relationship with two women when, oh, he's predictably absent as a young dude and kind of using both, but at least he's an honest artist. One of which is Joan Baez, played by Monica Barbaro, who is nominated for Best Supporting Actress. She was like the other performances of this film. She did fine, but didn't really stand out. There are plenty of other stronger supporting actresses roles snubbed, like Aunjanue Ellis from Nickel Boys. Elle Fanning's performance was actually one of the more distinct of the film, but I guess she wasn't nominated because she's a fictional composite character or something. Timothée Chalamet's lead role as Bob Dylan isn't bad, but I wasn't ever able to feel the character, only the actor. Edward Norton as Pete Seeger comes off less as an impression than Timmy, but just feels like Edward Norton. It's funny how the film ignores Seeger's politics for the most part. Boyd Holbrook's Johnny Cash was pretty silly, and there's some terribly obvious product placement for fucking bugles of all things in one of his scenes. This film needs tighter editing because the 2-hour and 20-minute runtime was a fucking chore. This film is nominated for Best Sound because I guess it's a musical biopic, but the sound design didn't stick out to me positively or negatively. It was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, which I think is a joke. It is also nominated for Best Costume Design because it's a period piece, I guess. Another aspect which didn't jump out to me. I don't know, this film does so much of what Inside Llewyn Davis did in its fictional world to a much worse extent in like every way. I wish I just rewatched that movie, then read up on the Wikipedia articles, and listened to the music of people that this film covers. I found this to be kind of a waste of time. Next is Conclave from the director of All Quiet on the Western Front, another Best Picture nominee I was not a fan of. And much like All Quiet on the Western Front, I was very unengaged with this film and feel like the score insisted a much more intense experience than what was on screen. Except the score of this film was much more annoying and repetitive. This film follows one cardinal's quest to find the right pope as he handles an election amongst his peers. The lead character is played by Ralph Fiennes. It's a fine performance. Get it? No, but like seriously. The writing of the character is way too clean and flawless to a bland extent, and I did not find him very engaging. Stanley Tucci is probably the second actor with the most screen time in this film, and his character and performance is also very drab. There are some great supporting roles from John Lithgow and Sergio Castellitto, but we really don't spend much time with either, which was a disappointment. There's another small role from Isabella Rossellini, who was nominated for Best Supporting Actress, and she was the same as Fiennes. Great actress in a bland role, but she's barely featured in here as well. That whole nom feels like a career nomination more than anything. Much like A Complete Unknown, this film is shot competently, but it lacks any interesting visual design. The most I can say is I liked how the color red was used throughout the film. This film is apparently 2 hours long, but it feels like it's 3 hours. Some of the conflicts of this film feel forced and payoffs feel unearned. There is one scene that ends in an intentionally funny way, which I want to include as B-roll in this video, but I'll hold off since it's one of the only moments of the film that left me with anything memorably positive. The film has an ending which feels incredibly cheesy and cheap, something that goes against much of the characterization shown in the film, but it was a moment where I actually was intrigued at where the film would go. But yeah, the film just ends, none of it is explored, and I'm left feeling like my time is wasted. I will never watch this film again. I initially gave it a 5 out of 10 because it was competently directed and had decent performances, but the more I thought of this film, the less I like it. Yeah, it's a 4 out of 10. Oh, and I got a feeling that this is going to win Best Picture. Yeah, that would be what I would place my bets on. Next is Emilia Perez. Yeah, I know. You probably like Conclave, A Complete Unknown, and Wicked more than this film. Don't get me wrong, I still do not like this film, and I'm pretty dang sick of talking about it. Watch my spoiler review about the film's trans representation if you want to hear more in-depth views. I love seeing films about trans women. I'm a trans woman myself. However, the trans aspect of this film is very cliche and oftentimes clueless to the trans experience in a way that so many films about trans people written and directed by people who aren't trans come off. Many plot beats are done in very uncreative and unearned ways. The film focuses on less interesting characters than the trans woman at the center. The first half is kind of gonzo, which at the very least makes it entertaining even though it's not good, but the second half is just pretty boring. The film needed tighter editing big time. For a musical, the only songs which stand out are memorable for their cringe. Man to woman. From penis to vagina. I don't even remember the score, which shocks me since it is nominated. At the very least, I think the film's directing is interesting, with some longer takes, nice cinematography, and some great choreography. Regardless, I think the trans actress, Carla Sofia Gascon, does a great job, and while she isn't one of my favorite performances of the year, at least her nomination means trans women might be hired for bigger roles. I think it is weird that she is not nominated for supporting though, because predictably the film sidelines her for an incredibly boring character who isn't trans. So many scenes with Zoe Saldana feel like we should shift focus on Carla's character, but whatever. She's really the lead character. Even with a bad script, Saldana delivers a great performance and an acting nom is well deserved. The supporting performances are fine except for the third most important role of the film from Selena Gomez, which is quite forced and comes off inauthentic. It sucks because the director of this film, Jack Odiar, has directed two of my favorite films ever. But hey, great directors can make bad films. Dune Part 2 is next. I'm sorry, y'all, I didn't enjoy Dune Part 1. I found it overlong, incomplete, and uninteresting. However, I did like Dune Part 2. While I was impressed by this film's visual design, seemingly having better CG effects than the first film and still keeping up some interesting cinematography, I initially wasn't super engaged with the world presented in this film, especially since the first film was so mid to me. However, not to sound like a Reddit atheist, I started to become more intrigued by the obvious parallels of using religion to control people, and I became more interested in Paul Atreides' story here. I thought the dialogue as the central conflict arose were less lore babble and were generally better and more interestingly written than the first film. The film is filled with many great performances, especially my boy Javier Bardem. Like, if he got the supporting actor nom for this, I wouldn't have minded one bit. I also love the Bene Gesserit stuff, which is always ominous and creepy. Even though the film's runtime was overlong at nearly 3 hours, I thought the film had strong pacing in the second and third act. The score also used less of the annoying voice additions in the first film, which went a long way. This film is also nominated for cinematography, which I don't mind too much, even if I have plenty of films I thought were shot better from the year. Best sound isn't something that stood out to me in positive, negative ways, but whatever. Best visual effects, yeah, sure. And best production design, I understand. I don't quite love Dune Part 2 as much as everyone else, but I still think it's a very solid film, and the Best Picture nomination isn't ridiculous like the last couple I was talking about. I didn't love I'm Still Here, but I still think it is a good film and not an outrageous Best Picture choice. Without spoiling too much, this film is about a family living under a military dictatorship in early 1970s Brazil. This film focuses mainly on Eunice Paiva. The performances in this film are very naturalistic, which helps them come off more genuine. Actress Fernanda Torres is excellent in this role, and I think the Best Actress nomination makes complete sense. In her performance, it is heartbreaking to see the face she has to put up to show her resilience under such duress. I also love Celton Mello in this film, who is similar to Torres' character in terms of keeping a lot held in, but has a much more jovial mask on. While there are some great performances from the young actors, there is definitely a scene or two with the young cast where their acting came off a bit inauthentic. The visual design of the film doesn't have the most distinct personality, but there are some frames which I thought were absolutely gorgeous and are etched into my mind. I also think the visual design is best at capturing location. The seaside Rio area is painted distinctly and gives a good sense of atmosphere, and the interior of the family's house is explored thoroughly and contrasted purposefully. However, my main problem with this film is its structure and pacing. The first hour or so of this film is mostly slice of life, which I can really enjoy a purposeful slice of life, but to me, this section didn't have a very interesting way of exploring these characters. While we get some decent setup for the political atmosphere and the parent characters, aside from some great beach shots and the occasional mix of other film stock, the first 30 minutes to an hour didn't encapsulate me in its writing or visual design. I honestly kind of checked out in the first hour waiting for something to happen, and when it did, I was totally sucked into the movie. There's a span of this film which is emotionally intense and extremely engaging, but the initial resolution for one of the characters' dilemmas in this section felt a bit rushed through. Still, the film's central conflict went on, and the film did a decent job of keeping my attention, but I couldn't help but feel like a lot of the second and third act were very repetitive in what they explore. Even worse, the film does not know where to end. Again, trying not to spoil anything, but one narrative device towards the end of this film is repeated again after I thought the film was over, and I thought the last 15 or so minutes were completely unnecessary. I just want to make it clear, I didn't need this to be like a thriller all the way through. There are plenty of slow burn character studies that capture a sense of dread that have my attention all the way through. And there was a lot I enjoyed about this film. There were just spans that I just didn't think worked in terms of its pacing and capturing my attention. It's a small flaw, but I want to mention it. I also feel like the ending had a little unexplained aspect to a character in which I was very impressed by how the film didn't explain this aspect until it just explained it in the most unnatural way. And while the score of this film never feels necessary, I think in the first half of this film it's kind of amazing. However, the latter half of the film has some very unfitting and kind of bad musical pieces which almost ruined a scene or two. The film also has a pretty good use of sound design. Anyways, I enjoyed this film despite its flaws, and maybe it will be a 7 out of 10 on rewatch, but for now I'm giving it a high 6 because of those pacing issues. Oh, and the film is nominated for Best International Feature, so I guess since the only other international Best Picture nomination for the category is Emilia Perez, it's between this film and that film. The one I want to win of the two is pretty obvious. My fourth favorite of the Best Picture nominees is Nickel Boys, which follows the friendship of two black teens in a Jim Crow era Florida. I really love how the film sticks to a first-person point of view perspective, which feels purposeful, often uncomfortable, and is very impressive. There are some incredible long takes in this film. The film also has one of my favorite scores of the year, which is incomparable to any score I'm familiar with for a film. Why the hell was Conclave score nominated over this? Seriously, this only got a Best Picture nomination and adapted screenplay nomination, which is a crime. And I can't believe this was not nominated for any cinematography awards from the Academy. Really? Brandon Wilson's performance is phenomenal, and Aunjanue Ellis-Taylor deserved a Best Supporting Actress nomination and was totally snubbed. She's in my top 5 supporting actress performances of the year. Ethan Harici is also great, but there was a scene or two where his performance came off a bit rough. It might have been an ADR issue though. Some of the editing choices of the film deliver some powerful moments which wouldn't have worked otherwise. However, it's also where I have some problems with the film, as I feel the film is rather overlong for what it explores effectively. I especially felt this in the latter half of the film. There were a couple scenes that I thought could be cut and others I wish we spent more time on. I also feel like the occasional moments of the film's strange overt imagery did not work. Regardless, while I found the second half weaker than the first half, the last 5 minutes lead to one of my favorite endings of 2024 movies. This could easily bump up to an 8 on rewatch. For now, it's a high 7. The Brutalist is my third favorite of the Best Picture nominees, directed by Brady Corbett, an actor from a lot of niche films I love. Like seriously, check out all 3 of these movies if you can handle disturbing, meaningful experiences. The film follows a Hungarian Jewish Holocaust survivor's new life in America as a brutalist architect. There's a lot of aspects in the film which add to the experience which I don't see in many other films nowadays. The film has an overture, a 15-minute intermission, which helps a lot in its 3-hour and 45-minute runtime, and the whole thing is gorgeously shot in VistaVision. The film is nominated for Best Cinematography and Corbett for Best Director and is completely earned. I love how this film frames its architecture and how beautiful landscapes are captured in the wide screen. There's a great understanding of how to use empty space in here. The film's score by Lowell Crawley, which is nominated for Best Original Score, is also one of my favorites of the year. I can't decide if I like this score of this film or Queer better. All the performances of the film are great. My favorite roles are actually from 2 supporting performances. Guy Pearce, who is rightfully nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and a small role from Joe Alwyn, who was also great in the small screen time he got in Kinds of Kindness. Adrian Brody and Felicity Jones are really good. Both are nominated for Oscars for their performances, but I wouldn't call them my favorite performances of the year. Still, both are excellent at displaying pain and come off very genuine. Admittedly, I was a little bit disoriented in the overture, even though I love the long take nature there, but I absolutely fell in love with the film in its first part. And I like the second part of the film a little less than the first, really because of how the second part ends. The final scene in the second part feels very unnatural and came off like the cheesy, unrealistic wishful thinking I felt in Conclave's ending, to a much lesser extent though. Then the epilogue came about, and I was honestly wishing the film had a more fleshed out third part instead of an epilogue. The epilogue is a strange clash with the rest of the film, which could work in theory, but it just came off like I was hand-feeding the film's themes and purposes, which I wish were left to my imagination. Still, the epilogue had a banger musical piece, so it wasn't all a loss. Honestly, talking about the film here makes me want to bump it up to an 8. Alas, I'll keep it at a high 7 for now. I'm very happy about The Substance getting a Best Picture nomination, a surprising nomination since horror films rarely get appreciation in the Academy Awards. Though this year, Nosferatu and Alien Romulus also got nominations for other categories, Nosferatu deserved more. Anyways, The Substance is my third favorite film of the year, honestly, and I've already seen it 3 times. This film is written and directed by Coralie Fagia, credits which are both deservedly nominated in the respective categories. This is a film that takes an idea and goes further than I could ever have imagined without being a tad bit boring. I absolutely adore Demi Moore's lead performance, and supporting roles from Margaret Qualley and Dennis Quaid are both in my top 5 of the year. both of which were snubbed from nominations. Like, seriously, Rossellini's bit role from Conclave and that one role from A Complete Unknown over this incredibly dynamic portrayal of a character which could have came off so cliche but didn't. The cinematography is exceptional, purposeful, interesting, and unique. I love the color palette and use of color in the film. I also think the sound design is excellent and adds so much. It's another complete snub, though I will admit I don't remember much of the film's score. This film is superbly edited and has great pacing despite having a runtime of 2 hours and 20 minutes. The intro quote-unquote montage, trying to be vague, and last 20 minutes are some of my favorite of a film ever. This is a film that's mostly campy and satirical, but has some very effective serious moments and knows when to do what. I think the film has fantastic practical and CG effects and a lot of enjoyable gore. My only qualm is that this film has a very short but completely unnecessary flashback. It's like a split-second moment. There's a little span in the film's ending that feels teeny tiny bit over the top. Like, yeah, so much of the film is over the top and campy, but this was a bit of an eye roll. But they are very minor defects. The Substance has quickly become one of my favorite horror movies of all time, and it's a complete joy to show friends and family who have never seen it before. And yeah, Anora is my favorite film of the Best Picture nominations, and it's honestly my favorite film of 2024. This film is edited, written, and directed by Sean Baker. Film credits, which all have nominations in their respective categories, once again deservingly so. This film is about the relationship between two very different people, following a stripper who goes by Annie, played amazingly by Mikey Madison, who also earned a nomination for her performance. Much like performances from I'm Still Here, Mikey hides so much under the surface of her character and keeps a consistent guard up. I love the range of emotions she captures in many of the film's long takes. So yeah, sorry Demi Moore, Madison would probably be my best actress, though of course I wouldn't mind either. There isn't a weak performance in this film. Everyone feels genuine, and much of the supporting roles are absolutely incredible. Yura Borisov is nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and he is my favorite supporting actor performance of the year. It's a very nuanced performance that goes in directions I did not expect, and it's a character that transcends dialogue. He shows so much in his expressions alone. Karen Kalergulian, a regular in Sean Baker films, is freaking hilarious and also nails one of my favorite performances of the year. I've seen this movie twice already. This film has so many diverse and gorgeous shots, distinct use of bright colors, fantastic use of its Brooklyn location, and complicated, flawless wonders. I love how the film uses licensed music, though one of the tracks was already one of my favorite songs, to be fair. Even though it's a little over 2 hours, I was consistently engaged. And this is another Best Picture nomination with one of my favorite endings of the year. A unique experience which does so much exceptionally, and I can't really think of any problems with it. I've seen every Sean Baker film except for his first one, and this one is easily my favorite. Look, while there were some stinkers in the Best Picture nominations, I'm very happy that a handful of my favorite films of 2024 were also nominated for this award. I plan on doing another video, if I have enough time, of which I'd choose of these categories if I had to pick them. But to name a few films I enjoyed which were glaring Best Picture snubs, Nosferatu was one of my favorite films of 2024, and a horror film which, ignoring campaigning strategy, I thought could have had a leg up over The Substance considering the history of Nosferatu in film. The Apprentice got 2 acting nominations, both of which I'm all for. But yeah, it was another favorite of mine, which would have been a great Best Picture nomination. It's also crazy that Luca Guadagnino's 2 films were not nominated. I especially love Queer. I wish more people saw To a Land Unknown. This is an incredible drama of 2 Palestinian cousins stuck in Greece, which earned some of the biggest emotional reactions from myself of the year. And okay, I know documentaries have never received a Best Picture nomination, but Lance Oppenheim's Sperm World is my second favorite film of the year. This documentary follows a bunch of different interesting people who are seeped in a world of underground sperm donations, much like Lance Oppenheim's first feature-length documentary, Some Kind of Heaven, which is one of my favorite films of all time as well. Sperm World is gorgeously and purposefully shot to the point where it looks like a fictional narrative instead of a documentary. It covers an array of emotions. I love the score and sound design. Sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's hilarious. Y'all gotta watch it on Hulu. Also, Memoir of a Snail is one of my favorite films of the year. It would be my 4th favorite. That was nominated for Best Animated Feature, but yeah, that easily could have been nominated for Best Picture. Not only is the stop motion in that film amazing, it's a very unique experience crafted by some incredibly authentic characters. I love Adam Elliott's attention to detail and little quirks that he creates for his characters as well. Anyways, as always, tell me where you agree or disagree in the comments, and you could help support the channel by clicking that subscribe button and liking this video. Go check out my Letterboxd and Lego channel, which are both under Just Too Good. I'm always taking video suggestions and movie recommendations in the comments as well. And I'll see you later. Peace out. Bye.